Mr. Rod. Move to the regular agenda. Number 1, consideration and possible action to approve final plat for Meridiana Detention Reserve 5 Phase 2, being a subdivision of 1.074 acres out of the HT and BRR Company Survey, Section 61, Abstract 282, and the Oliver Hall Survey, Abstract 203, City of Manvel, Brazoria County, Texas. 30-day extension forwarded with favorable recommendation failed by PD&Z with a 0-5 vote. Kyle?
Mayor and council members, Jessica's going to be addressing several of these next items.
Okay, fine. Jessica, hi.
Hello, good evening. This is the a final plat for Meridiana Detention Reserve V, Phase 2. The applicant had requested a 30-day plat extension. That did not get a favorable approval from the Planning, Development, and Zoning Commission. That's because by approving a 30-day plat extension, the clock eventually will run out in order to approve some of these items, specifically approval from the drainage district. So rather than approving a 30-day extension, by way you have to come back and have another action in 30 days. Staff made the recommendation not to approve the plat based on land surveyors' signatures. We don't have those. Drainage district signatures, a signed and notarized lien holder subordination, and then also an approved set of construction plans for that. So staff does not recommend approval of this final plat.
All right. Any discussion?
Is there any issue with combining 1 through 4 and possibly even combining number 5 into that and just saying, make a motion to approve with any written statements or conditions, or separate, just do the first 4 together? Okay. So Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve agenda items 1 through 4.
All right, do I have a second? All right, all those in favor? All those? No, we are putting them all together, 1 through 4. I'm sorry. And we didn't make it clear, but he has given a motion to approve, and now we're at the vote. All those who approve, and all of those who do not approve. All right, we have a 7-0 vote to not approve. All right. That is 1 through 4. And now number 5. Consideration and possible action to direct staff to provide applicants written statements of the conditions for any conditional approvals and the reasons for disapprovals of any plans or plats that were not approved per Texas Local Government Code 212.0091. Jessica?
So what this item does is it allows you to give staff the direction to write the written correspondence of why a plat is disapproved or conditionally approved. As the law reads with Texas Local Government Code, it says the governing body. You may question what happened before this. Staff was still doing that, but this just sort of ties everything up that the governing body is giving staff the authority to write that letter on your behalf.
All right. Any discussion? Do I have a motion to approve? Make a motion to approve. And a second?
A second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? And the motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Number 6, consideration and possible action to approve the first of 2 readings of ordinance 2022-0-03, an ordinance of the City of Manvel, Texas, amending the zoning ordinance of the city by amending the zoning classification of 21,000 square feet located at 7507 Masters Road, Manvel, Texas, from Light Commercial District, State Highway 6 Overlay Districts, LC, SH6, to Light Commercial District, State Highway 6 Overlay District with specific use permit, LC slash SH6 SUP, providing for the granting of a specific use permit with conditions to authorize the use of property for NAICS use 621111, offices of physicians, except mental health specialists, providing for the amendment of the city's zoning map, providing severability, and providing a penalty in an amount not to exceed $2,000 for each day of violation of any provision hereof, forwarded with favorable recommendations with conditions by PD&Z with a 5-0 vote. Wale, hi.
I'll be recusing myself, Mayor. Thank you.
That's fine. And you can stay in your seat. Yeah, it's fine. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Sorry. In the past, we did not do that. All right. Yes.
Mayor Davidson, council members, this is a presentation on the special use permit, which is for a medical office in the 21,000 square feet lot area, address at 7507 Masters Road in the Light Commercial District, State Highway 6 Valley District, to allow the use of a property for NAICS use for medical office. We were here January 24th when we made a presentation to the Planning Development Zoning Committee, and then I'm here just to present to your honor the outcome and what transpired. The applicant submitted an application for this medical use, medical office. We went to the site, visited the area, did our research, and then prepared a report and presented it to the PDZ. And we noticed that the city zoning ordinance, NAIC use number 6211, requires a special use permit in the light commercial district, LC. We also noticed that certain uses of land and buildings or structures may not be appropriate under any circumstances in any given zoning district, but they may be appropriate where adequate precautions and conditions are taken to assure compatibility with surrounding uses, public need, and the orderly development of the city as a whole. This is the locality map of the area. The zoning, as I've mentioned already, the light commercial district, State Highway 6 Valley District, and as such. And we look at the environmental existing uses and also the environmental uses in the environs in the area. Staff look at the zoning ordinance requirements, as I've stated earlier, and then continued with our analysis on this particular application. Most of the things that we came to in our analysis, one was the comprehensive plan, which in its vision statements, in the 2015 comprehensive plan, seeks to maintain this rural character and the small town values whilst managing its growth. And as a small medical office and others, the justification submitted by the applicant actually meets these requirements. We also look at the zoning ordinance requirements, which actually was governing how this area can be changed from the light commercial district, State Highway 6 Overlay District, to light commercial State Highway 6 Overlay District with an SUP. The conditions that we went by this ordinance included issues such as, one, the area as it is. We found much more compatibility in terms of the site and its adjoining uses. The medical office really is not out of character, and although some conditions may be required, and we kind of sided with the approval of this particular application. what we noticed was that in our site visits, the requirements that we also look at in terms of parking, in terms of access, and in terms of trips, the area as it is can actually accommodate the small number of maybe vehicular trips that might come over there. But an issue that we noticed really was the parking area. There were no stripe parking, and also, as you see in the pictures over here, the parking really has really not been maintained in one way or the other. During rainy season, you'll see these potholes and the tracking of wet and crushed concrete material, which we really felt that as a medical office, whereby a number of patients, some might be coming in wheelchairs and others, this is really not really conducive really for such a facility, therefore needing some kind of action. So we came by certain conditions in terms of approving the application based upon certain conditions. One, that we felt the parking lot shall be improved with asphalt surface approved by the city engineer before a certificate of occupancy is issued. Two, we believe that the applicant, there should be provided striped parking spaces as per section 7745 parking before a certificate of occupancy is issued. The main topic of discussion at the Planning, Development and Zoning Commission really focused on the existing conditions of this parking. And as you look at the reports that were given to you, and based upon these discussions that we presented to the Planning Development Commission, we present to you these recommendations in terms of our approval, but with an improvement of the parking areas. And the mayor and councillors, I thank you very much, and this is a short summary of the presentation.
All right. Have any discussion, questions?
I got a
Yes,
couple.
sir.
Thank you for your presentation. I've got my first question is, it's on the agenda that it was recommended by the PD&Z with a 5-0 favorable vote, but it was not. The documentation that was given to us says it was a 4-1 vote. Does that impact our ability to do anything with this tonight?
No, their recommendation passed with their 4 votes that they needed to pass it with. So.
Okay. So the second question I have is if the notes in the packet that we have say that the building owner is not willing to make these changes, correct? He doesn't want to go through that, so why are we approving it at all?
So according to the previous meeting with the Planning, Development, and Zoning Commission, he had stated that the property owner stated that due to the cost that there wouldn't be an improvement with it. The application wasn't withdrawn, so we're keeping it on this course to go to you because it was a recommendation that was given from Planning and Zoning. You, as a body, ultimately make that decision. So if I was the property owner, I wouldn't have withdrawn it either because you may not force the property owner to do the asphalt parking. So it makes sense that he's continued with the application.
Okay, I can live with that. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Are we thinking? Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, just wanted to make it clear. So approving this does not guarantee that the property owner is going to make the recommendations?
Make the improvements?
Yes, the improvements.
Well,
I'm sorry. If this is approved, the recommendations that come to us, yes or no, this doesn't guarantee the owner is going to make the improvements.
That's true, but the certificate of occupancy couldn't be issued until he does.
I just wanted to understand that correctly. Okay.
Okay, so the clarity of that is,
The clarity is if you approve the conditions that are recommended, a certificate of occupancy could not be issued until the parking lot is improved.
okay,
If you wanted to use it for some other land use that doesn't require an SUP, he could do that. But if he wants to use it for this NAICS use, and the council approves those conditions, then the certificate of occupancy, in order for the business to get started, couldn't be issued until the parking lot is improved.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'd like to make a motion to approve as presented.
All right,
I'll second.
all right. All those in favor? All those opposed? And the motion carries 6-0. All right. We have consideration, what's up here? All right. Consideration and possible action to approve the first of two readings of ordinance 2022-0-05, an ordinance of the City of Manvel, Texas, amending Chapter 50, Planning and Development, Article 3, Comprehensive Plan, by approving the 2022 Master Wastewater Plan Update Document as the 2022 Master Wastewater Plan, integrating, the city's 2022 Master Wastewater Plan into the city's comprehensive plans, providing for conformity of all wastewater regulations to the Master Wastewater Plan, providing a penalty in an amount not to exceed $2,000 per day for each day of violation of any provision hereof, and providing for severability and providing a severance clause and effective date.
Mayor and council members, you had the presentation by Richard Weatherly at the last council meeting. You've had an opportunity to take a look at it. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have. After you get done with that, we would recommend that you approve the revision, the 2022 revision to the master wastewater plan.
All right. Yes, sir.
Quick question, thank you, Mayor. Kyle, since this was presented to us at our last meeting, has there been any feedback received from anybody in the community, any key stakeholders that would be impacted by this?
I don't believe we've received any.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
Have a second?
I second that motion.
All right. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Consideration and possible action on appointing members to the Animal Control Advisory Board.
Mayor, Chief Trailer is going to address this one.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have identified 4 members for our Animal Advisory Board Commission, one of which is a returning member that we're submitting for approval, which is Dr. Amanda, I know I'm going to mess her name up, Hoffpower. She's with the Alvin Animal Clinic. She's recently served on a board. She has generously agreed to come back and help us again. The other 2 members that we have appointed or have requested services is James McLean, our Administrative Sergeant with the Police Department, Jessica Rodriguez, our Development Services Director, and we've also received an application, and I know I'm going to mess this name up too, Alina Goodson with the Three Little Pitties Rescue Group, which completes the requirements of the state law for the Animal Advisory Committee. We are submitting those as recommendations for y'all's approval.
All right. Any discussion, questions?
I'll
Any-
gladly make a motion to approve.
All right. Moving right along.
I'll second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Chief, for working on that.
All right, consideration and possible action to approve Resolution 2022-R-01, a resolution adopting an amended personnel policies and procedures handbook dated February 7th, 2022, for all city employees, providing that this resolution shall become effective from and after its passage.
Mayor and council members, I'm going to start, but I think the chief will be able to answer more specifically. State law changed and requires the city to adopt 2 new policies, mainly or specifically dealing with mental health leave and quarantine leave for police officers, first responders, including EMTs or paramedics, as well as firefighters. Since the city doesn't have a fire department or provide emergency medical services, it only pertains to the police officers. So I thought I'd let the chief just kind of brief you on those 2 real briefly, and then we can ask you for your approval.
Chief Trailer.
As Mr. Young stated, the new laws came into effect, and we are created these policies in order to get us in compliance with the state law. Just to go over them briefly, the quarantine leave for the police officers, fire, EMS, detention officers, basically just follows the police department or detention officers. We, like Kyle said, we don't have the EMS or the fire department in our services. In order for the way the law reads is the police department has to create a policy for this leave and as well as for the mental health leave. But being that the police department does not control the leave of the city employees, that's a responsibility of the city. We had to adjust and modify the city personnel policies to reflect that change. And then once this is approved, then the department will enact their policies that will comply with the state law. So in essence, we had to get the city policy changed before we can get the police department policy changed. And that's what we're doing tonight, is requesting the approval of these 2 policy changes so we can comply with the state law.
Okay. Any discussion, questions, Jason?
Yeah, so thank you, you answered one question that you did some housekeeping, but there's still some missing stuff. So on page 64, all the certification pay amounts continue to be blank in this manual. Are we gonna clean that up, or are they intentionally blank?
No, that was included. We can include it in here, but what we did was when the council, when we implemented the policy for the police department, they were included in that approval, and it was included in the budget. But we could add it here as well.
Yeah, I just don't want you to end up in a situation that these are all blank. You know, if they don't need to be here because we've addressed it somewhere else, then let's clean it up.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-R-01 with the recommendation from Councilman Albert.
Oh, all right, and a second from Nicole. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Number 10, we have consideration and possible action to direct staff on the following: a noise ordinance, A, and B, a zoning ordinance with landscaping. Kyle?
Mayor and council members, Jessica's going to start the discussion, and then we're going to add in as well.
So, trying to get some direction from council on where we kind of begin this process. And last time we talked about noise and, you know, possibly some different districts having to do with noise and capability levels, and then also with landscaping. So from my research, I've concurred that the state of California regulates this a lot. They even go so far as to regulate indoor noise, which is following EPA guidelines and preserving the hearing of individuals is what it's about. I think it generated out of the 70s. So I did other research around Texas, and I found some good materials in the North Texas DFW area where they really look at different zones and fragment it out. And in this case, we look at residential use zones, commercial zoning, which has some mixed use, your industrial and manufacturing, and then also in entertainment. I realize now that's not something that we have, but that's not to say in the future we wouldn't have a use. So this isn't looking at saying, well, allowing a certain decibel in, let's say, open single-family residential or in heavy commercial. This is actually looking at the use of the property. So I put something together here that would give decibel ranges in your daytime hours and then your nighttime hours, depending on what zone you're in. With zone 1 just being proposed as a residential use property, and zone 4 going all the way to entertainment, right? So the louder things that we're listening. Things that we also need to address in this ordinance is the measuring of that sound. We all agree that the way the ordinance is currently written right now, it doesn't distinguish if it's one time you get a loud noise or it's a sustained noise. So the way it's written, if you've gotten a noise that's one time, well, by golly, you're in violation of that ordinance. So we need to do further research, but basically come to you with saying how we're going to measure a sustained noise. Is that in a 15-minute increment where we're averaging above? What's that decibel that's allowed? Is it within 30 minutes? Is it within 5 minutes? But something that gives us, we could actually measure. I'm in the development realm, so I always, like having measurable things that I can look at and check a box and say, yes, it's meeting it, no, it's not, and telling me those ways that I can or cannot check that box. So that'll give us some assurance on that side. And what we've seen, just really through the research, the highest those decibels go up during the day are up to 80. And those are in your commercial and mixed-use districts, industrial and manufacturing, and then also governmental use property. You think, God, how could City Hall make that much noise? But governmental use also includes other things such as wastewater treatment plants, water plants, and those other items too, where or maybe the community services site. So we also looked at landscaping too, and we've mentioned this a few times actually when looking at SUPs, how landscaping can help buffer and mitigate noise. So we do that by buffer yards. With the table that was provided, you can have a buffer yard where it's just landscaping only. And you'll notice when it's just landscaping only, that buffer yard gets a little bit bigger because we wanna take you away from either something visually or from noise. The second option is with landscaping, and then also with a berm, a wall, or a fence. So then your strip of dedicated landscaping isn't quite as big, the greater the amount of landscaping that's put in. And we define it as your shade trees, your oak trees, ornamental trees, which may be some of your crepe myrtles. So we're varying in size and canopy of what that looks like, and then also the caliper of the tree. Your evergreen trees, which don't ever lose their foliage, so you're always going to sort of have that sound barrier because they're never going to lose their leaves. And then shrubbery. The fencing, it conforms to the height of the fencing of how we allow things in our residential districts as well as our commercial districts in there. The way the buffer yard will work is, so if you have a new business that's coming in, it's only going to be the requirement on the new development. So the existing or adjacent use, whether that's residential or whether that's commercial, wouldn't be subject to this. So this wouldn't apply to new development. In the case where, let's see, I don't want to get into too much detail with some of these, but I threw something together that kind of, I think it makes sense on how the graphic works for that. So those are two ways that we can mitigate new stuff that's coming in as well as stuff that's existing, because the way it works with the noise zones and how that's measured doesn't necessarily distinguish if it's an existing use or it's something that's coming in. Obviously, in a case where we're looking at a SUP, There are some mitigation techniques as you as a council can put in there for conditions, but when we're looking at an existing use or just something that ends up maybe not being compatible, we've got these tools here in order to better enforce rules and regulations.
Who's got hands up here?
I think we were tied, so I'll defer to Lorraine.
Lorraine? Hi.
May I ask the chief something? Chief, you don't mind? So how would you, if we were going down this road, which we are going to go down this road, how would you prefer the enforcement? Because I feel like you as well as code enforcement people will be the ones that will have to have some sort of strong measuring tool in order to enforce it. Because without something strong, it's just words. So whether it be the 15-minute, the hour-long, the tools, do you have ideas of the best way to put it down on paper to be able to enforce it? Because there's nothing more crappy than having a law you cannot enforce.
I agree. The ordinance that we have,
That's what it is.
the ordinance that we currently have, and Jessica and I have discussed this on many occasions, but really the ordinance we have right now needs to be reworked. It needs to be looked at. It needs to be, we need to focus on the different areas, the different zones. There's several reasons why we're looking at this in the manner that we're doing it. Is the ordinance is basically, if you meet that level, you're in violation. Well, if we do that and we focus on one area, then that's going to mean everybody else is going to be in violation. So we need to look at the measuring instrument, how we're going to do that. It needs to be a sustained, and that's just my opinion. Now, it's all going to revert back to what y'all decide, but in my opinion, it should be a sustained noise. It should be something that's sustained, that is a clear, viable nuisance, I guess you would say. And then we should have some type of mechanism of measuring based off of the zones that it comes out of. Examples we can give is when the Overflow Church was in operation, every Sunday we got noise complaints. We would go over there with a decibel meter, and yes, there was noise, but it never reached the exceeding amounts. The band performing over at the high school, that could be a noise violation if you really think about it. All the air tools along the mechanic shops on the Highway 6 corridor, they back up to Rogers every time they fire up an impact wrench. That could be a noise violation. So it's something that we need to look at to have a mechanism in place that would allow us to be able to properly, in my opinion, properly enforce these noise laws. Because right now, it's just like every other law that's in the book. Sometimes they need to be updated. And I think this one needs to be updated to include, as we grow, everything that's going to be coming in here, and we can be prepared for it when it comes down the pipe. I hope I answered your question.
You with Jessica, you guys have ideas. I mean, I do like this start. That's just my thoughts of how to zone it and how to prepare for the future so that this doesn't get out of hand. But you and Jessica have ideas on those tools and that sustainability. That's how you prefer to go with this?
That's the direction that we have found based on all our research. Excuse me, I pulled up several ordinances from surrounding cities. Some of them are just, some of them don't even have a mechanism at all. There's a city that's just to the north of us that there's no mechanism there at all as far as decibel readings or anything. You go further east, Friendswood actually has a very good ordinance in place which looks at the land use and the different types of noise that we can use, or different types of noise that's emitted. Alvin is in the same boat. I think they need to look at theirs too. There was an instance that there was relating back to some things that I researched on. There was a band playing at a restaurant, but there was nothing there to enforce that loud noise. So that's the entertainment side of it, and that's going to happen here. Eventually, we're going to have that. As a matter of fact, there's been several parties we've got called to where they have bands playing, you know, so that's in the residential side with an entertainment. So there's different things we really need to look at to try to incorporate the land use, our current land use, future land use, that we could have some enforcement action based off of that land use.
Thank you.
Because you're gonna have commercial property, industrial, industry, that's gonna butt up to residential property. You can have, the way our current ordinance reads, it's specific to residential property. And I think we need to expand that to incorporate land use of the other zones that we have.
Thank you, yes.
Okay, Jason?
So be careful what you wish for. So you've got the codes department now, so bring it. I mean, if it needs to change, then bring it. I mean, we can't do it if you guys don't bring it to us. I appreciate what we have here, but I'm kind of disappointed that this isn't going to address any of the current problems we have. So if we move forward with this idea for now forward, great. But what's our plan for the issues that we're having now? Whether it's we are or aren't, and I don't know the answer to this because we haven't heard officially, but are we not enforcing the rules that we already have? And if we aren't, why? If these regulations aren't effective, then why aren't we fixing it? What do we need to do to fix it? But what are we going to do for folks that are doing business now, I guess, for lack of a better term, to make sure that they're not a nuisance?
Right.
Somebody.
And again, just like the chief said, the ordinance that we have right now, and I think we've all kind of mentioned it in the past, I don't think it's appropriate the way that it is not intended to be used. Because as you heard, there are cars that go down this street right out here that probably break 65 decibels. Just the normal ambient levels along Highway 6 probably would come close to breaking our ordinance. Therefore, we need to look and see what the real ambient noise level should be, and it should be based on the areas that are being used for different things. Areas that you're on a 20-acre piece of property, it's going to be quiet. It's going to be considerably quieter than if you're within 300 feet or 500 feet of Highway 6. Just the ambient level, not including the land use.
Great, so how are we going to fix it?
That's what we've come up with. We've come up with the idea of different zones and different levels. And if that's what you want us to do, then we'll go back, we'll come up with an ordinance that actually does that.
I mean, I bring it up because this job isn't going to get easier for any of us. I mean, the growth is happening. So if we don't get ahead of it now, it's only going to get harder.
Well, one of the things, and I'm sorry we're having a conversation, but one of the things that we're actually proposing is buffering between different kinds of land uses. So as something comes in, if they're going to be if they're going to be having a land use that has a high probability of having a higher noise factor, they're going to have to do additional buffering between their edge of the property line back into their property, so that as new stuff comes in, it's going to be affected by this. If there's stuff that's specifically going to be using the noise ordinance or the noise levels in those differing zones, then obviously that's another thing. The chief and Jessica both said, if it spikes, does the council want us to write a ticket? Should it be over a period of time, a 5-minute, a 15-minute, an hour, however long? Because if you wanted to enforce it without any regard to what might really happen, the police probably could go out there and enforce different things all the time. And I don't know if you really want us to do that. I think it's probably more realistic if you do it over a sustained period of time as opposed to a spike.
Okay, that answer your question? Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with the chief with the sustaining noise approach rather than it just being the spikes. I like having the trees, the buffering of the trees from an environmentally positive standpoint. And I agree that, you know, this is a start in the right direction, but I just want to make sure that we take a comprehensive approach with it to make sure that we put together a solid package that gives everybody the tools that they need. Two questions that I have. One, from the noise standpoint, if we adopt something that changes the noise standards by putting them into zones, that does not mean that the current businesses or entities that are operating in the city are grandfathered in. They would have to comply by the new zones from a regulation standpoint. Is that correct? Okay. And then to speak to Councilman Albert's point, one of the questions that he raised that I didn't really feel like it was answered was whether or not our current ordinance is being enforced. We're talking about changing the ordinance, which I agree the ordinance does need to be changed, but there's been some issues that have been expressed that the question is raised as to whether or not we, one, are enforcing the current ordinance. And if we're not, what do we need to do in the meantime to enforce the current ordinance in an appropriate manner until these adjustments are adopted?
I guess I'll go back and ask the same question. Do you want us to enforce it at a spike? Anytime anything exceeds 65 decibels, do you want the police to write a ticket?
What's the ordinance currently read?
Anything exceeds 65 is a violation of the ordinance.
You gotta enforce the law.
Okay.
I mean, in my opinion, the law is the law. My opinion is that, this is just my opinion, is that you enforce the law. Now, I do agree that we should revise it to a sustained approach. I think that's the proper manner to take. But if we're not going to enforce what we have on our books, then why are they on our books?
Got it.
That's as one
Take that
council
as
member, that's my
direction from the
opinion.
council then.
Yeah, that's just, as one council member, that's just my opinion.
I have some difficulty with that in that it could spike, and then by the time the police get there, it is no longer a sustaining decibel amount. So Kyle, what were you going to add to that?
Well, that's exactly it. The ordinance reads anything exceeding 65 decibels is a violation. Do you want us to enforce that?
Your Honor, may I?
Yes, sir.
You are required to enforce it.
Okay.
And it is not direction from council. You are required to enforce it. It's what's in the charter. You and the police chief are required to enforce the ordinances in the city, period. So it's not a, go ahead.
Well, you say I need to speak up, Jason?
Go ahead.
Sorry, you're the first victim. No, there's always officer judgment. There's always officer discretion. Any car going down, speeding down Highway 6, every single one of them could get a ticket. If the officer takes the first one, sits back, 10 minutes later does the 6th one, the 20th one, the 50th one, and everybody that didn't get through, we didn't enforce the ordinance, but at some point there's officer discretion. In code enforcement, sometimes the goal is to try to find a solution, not just write a ticket. And even though I haven't been part of the other meetings, I have heard that there've been several meetings to try to find a solution, to try to get the parties talking, to try to get something done. And sometimes in the code enforcement realm, that's effective, and that's a better goal than whether somebody has to pay a fine, in my opinion. So I guess at this point, trying to find a solution, and from what the gentleman said, it looks like there's been some attempt on the property owner to do something, and we hope that will continue. We're hoping maybe some of these, making the ordinance better, should be something that's done independent of this one specific situation.
And I agree 100%, and I understand that there needs to be some sort of, but what I was uncomfortable with was the tone that came across that we were wiping our hands of it, and it's our fault that you're going to do this. I agree, there should be some sort of discretion, but at what point do you decide what ordinance you're going to enforce and what ordinances you're not? If the ordinance is broken, then we should fix it. And that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that we can't decide what we're going to enforce and what we're not going to enforce, because then he gets away with it and he doesn't, and that's just not right. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Chief, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes. In regards to what we're trying to do, and in regards to what is going on currently, we have two separate conversations going on, what I'm hearing. We're trying to look at a fair and equitable enforcement action of the noise ordinance. That's what we're bringing to y'all. As far as the current situation, we have some things that are in progress, that are things in working. I really don't feel comfortable discussing in open forum right now, but there is some action that is being taken right now between the two parties to try to resolve this. We have had meetings. I haven't been part of those meetings because I wasn't part of code enforcement when the meetings occurred. But there have been meetings to try to come to resolutions. We try to get voluntary compliance. I have sat out there myself on many occasions with a decibel meter and watched the decibel meter. Last time I was out there, the highway noise averaged 60 to 61 decibels. Yes, it did spike once, twice on the day I sat out there. We are working right now to come up with a resolution. We have contacted Mr. Johnson, and we are taking appropriate actions to enforce this ordinance. I really don't want to discuss it in open forum right now because it's an ongoing issue, or not issue, but investigation, I guess you would say. Does that help you out?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'm good with that answer. I appreciate it. I mean, you're working to do something, but the step further is how do we make sure that this isn't a problem next week for somebody else or next month for somebody else? Let's get it fixed. Thank you for your work.
Yes, ma'am.
I would, if we can start and wrap it up and give some direction, I would like to just put my comment in that this is a good direction. I think we all somewhat are in concession a little bit, I hope, with what you've given us in the good direction of zoning it out, finding out what the levels are going to be in the certain areas that they're going to be, and write the language where it's a lot easier to be enforced. I would like to throw my opinion in the hat that it does need to be something sustainable over, I would say 15, 30 minutes. I just can't imagine. That's just what I believe. 15, 30 minutes. It's got to be something massive that you can go out and say, absolutely, this is in violation. But most importantly, written to where it is very easy to enforce, clear to enforce as you're making your determination, and whoever's going out there to decide at that time, they're issuing a ticket. That's what I'm going to recommend, if any of that makes sense, because I rambled too much.
Mayor, if I may.
Makes sense. Yes, sir.
Definitely interested in, based off of the feedback that's been shared tonight, to see what you guys put together and can bring forward to us. From a timeline standpoint, what are we looking at? Do we expect to see, does this have to go through PD&Z and then to council, or what's the process?
It's simply an ordinance that y'all would approve, 2 readings, and we will work as soon as we can to get it before you. I won't say that we'll be on the next agenda, but we'll work towards that. Yes, I apologize. The buffering section, which is in, chapter 77, would have to go to PD&Z, but the noise itself would go
Could
in.
come straight to us.
Right, it'd go straight to council.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for y'all's work on this.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, so it's my understanding that we are issuing direction. Do we need a vote? Okay. Okay, sounds good. All right, number 11, discussion and update on participation of Brazoria County CNR 3 in the South Masters Drainage Project as requested by Councilmember Acree. Larry?
Well, we learned about 3 weeks ago that the drainage plan was approved by the Drainage District. We don't know who's going to do it. So I think this is what I put on here. I'll leave this up to Dan. I think he might have something.
Sure. Actually, I had the opportunity to talk to Jody Scheibe today. He's the commissioner for CNR3. And they want to get together with us to have almost basically a pre-construction meeting. We were hoping to do it today, actually. I was hoping I'd have a here we go kind of thing. But they're finishing a bigger project that they're trying to complete. He thinks that they could actually get started on ours this summer. Right now, there's not a whole lot, when everything's super wet. probably not starting a dirt project, but just some ideas that we discussed was probably breaking it up into maybe 4 pods. So starting at the bottom one, maybe, 20 acres apiece or so. And we need to start visiting with our county commissioners to see if we can get like the big heavy-duty off-road dump trucks. If we can leave as much material on site as possible, I mean, we all know there's a canal that's 3 or 4 feet high, so we're not going to go higher than that, but my goodness, we could build a phenomenal berm around the whole thing that we're going to be digging. So if we can leave the dirt on site for the most part, that's huge. When we start hauling dirt off, that's when it gets expensive for everybody, of course. So if they can help out with the track hose and everything, and that's what we need to sit down and just do the nuts and bolts of how many can you spare for how long. He said that they did the one in Alvin. I think he said 15 months, I think, the one on South Street. That was a fourth of what we're talking about. So, I mean, this is another good reason to go in pods, go down as deep as we can, get some, real capacity immediately, then start working on the next one, get real capacity, and just kind of keep walking through it. So they're definitely not ghosting us. They're definitely still in this. We will probably, I would anticipate some type of an interlocal with them on, so nobody forgets that we're in the middle of a project, right? Maybe it's between them, maybe it's between the county as well, whoever can help us. Stacy Adams used to be a commissioner at BDD4. Lee Bloomer, he's always been very good to the city with BDD4, and they've, just in conversations that we've had, they've offered, hey, whatever we can do to help too, because the interlocal that we have with them allows them to jump out of their jurisdiction as long as it's consistent with our interlocal. So things are progressing. Again, I wish I could tell you, hey, we're starting on such and such a date, and this is how long it's going to take. But we don't have that yet. We're still moving forward.
Should we have a forum, or should we do something as a council?
My question to you, Dan, is I didn't realize that you weren't still being ghosted. I know that you had contacted them several times with no answer. So I'm glad to hear that you have had that communication. Would it be helpful for us to ask that we get these parties together rather than a universal drainage forum like we had in the past? Just get the players, the people that we are going to ask for their participation, and that we would really like to have interlocals signed between, so that, again, people don't forget that they have ponied up, so to speak. So is that something that is reasonable to request at this time, or do you want to get a little further down the road with some of your conversations? I just think that, as with Councilmember Acree, we just want to see something.
If I could recommend perhaps yourself and maybe Larry sit down with us at sort of the nuts and bolts discussion. Let's, get our act together before we present it, in a public forum, so that then it's the rah-rah, hopefully, and maybe, CNR3, maybe it's a joint workshop, so to speak, or, something like that, where we're all on the same page. I think in fact, that's what Jody actually recommended.
Okay.
Which I think is a good approach.
Well, and that's what we need, is a good approach. So if that's what you're recommending, yes, I would be on board for that. I'm sure that Councilmember Acree would be as well. And, this is a sooner than later, if at all possible. So if you could put that together for us, that would be helpful. So just tell us where to be and what time to be there, okay?
How does 8:30 sound tonight?
Yeah. No. Okay. So, all right. So we take no action tonight, Larry, but we have obviously given some direction, and I fully expect us to be able to have some action on that. All right. Number 12, consideration and possible action to direct staff on alternatives to speed up the process of building the new police department facility requested by Councilmember Albert. Jason?
Thank you, Ron. Council and staff, I want to reiterate that I think that we all agree that the police department needs out of the shoebox that they're in. And, you know, we've been barreling down the road of building them their new police station at the city center, but I continue to have concerns that should not be the first building that we build up there, because there's still a lot of uncertainty over the road that gets built to get them out the back and what happens when they get, well, that interchange is done. What I don't want to end up with is we build a great big beautiful police station that they can't get out of. And I've given a lot of thought to the fact that the whole purpose of this building was to get it up quickly, get us out of the shoebox that we were in and into this facility, and then this become, once we moved out of it, the court facility, I think, is one of the plans that we had discussed with it. And I can't help but wonder whether taking the building next door down and putting another building like this up leapfrogs us into getting the police station, getting them out faster, building our building, building the city hall being the first building up in the city center, so that when we get out and then subsequently build their building, then, you know, they're right next door to the courts. I think there's a lot of advantage to it. I think we can, we're not flush with city facilities anyway. So again, if we use the same premise that we used here, it becomes a utility building that we can cut it up and do whatever we need with in the future, but solves our immediate need. I mean, I think we put this building up in a year, you know, and there's no way that we're gonna get infrastructure and everything else built and a building designed and built for them in 12 months. There's just not. So I'm interested in what your thoughts and what the city staff's thoughts are.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
There's a couple of things, and Dan and the chief and I were kind of kicking around ideas, and Dan's come up with a couple of different ideas that we bring forward. One of the things that, as our discussion went, that I totally forgot, we have a provision on our own code that says we're not supposed to build critical facilities in floodplain. This is all in a floodplain. So that was one of the hesitancies of building a police station here. Building a building is a different thing. There are hesitations about trying to move a police department into a building because the biggest thing that you're going to have to move is dispatch. That's probably the biggest headache. And it takes a lot of work in order to do that. Not the least of which is if you're moving the antenna, you got to deal with the FCC, which isn't an insurmountable thing, but it's just something that you got to go through with the feds. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, as we were looking, I think at the last meeting you were talking about options. You were looking for options for the police department. So one of the other things that Dan had come up with was an option for not building the police station over on the city center. And I'll kind of I don't want to steal his thunder. He did a lot of work on this, and I don't want to take that away from him. So I'll let Dan kind of lead you through some of the handouts or the schematics that he worked up, and then we can kind of have a further discussion about it.
Sure. I was going to start, let's see. First pass through, could we build another building on this property that we own right now? On the property that we own, probably not. If we're able to purchase a little bit more right here on this block, the corner that is, then we could literally mirror the building that we are sitting in right now. We could put it back there where the existing parking lot is, make a really big parking lot in the front. That's an option. It's not a great option. But this actually, I think this is a really good option. Mirroring it kind of right where it sits, still having a parking area in the back and a parking area in the front. Then if you ever wanted to, as you said, get rid of that building that's been there for the old Vela Insurance building, the annex as we call it now, you could literally have 3 different buildings across there. We could use it almost immediately, probably within the next year, just for development services. I mean, we could, it won't go to waste. We need the space already. We want to hire people. We don't have, we're converting closets again. But as Kyle mentioned, one of the main issues is that right there, section 3267, critical facilities, new critical facilities shall not be located within the floodway 100-year floodplain or 500-year floodplain. And wouldn't you know it, number 3, police stations fit the definition of a critical facility. Okay, well, let's just double check. Here's where we're talking about right here. We turn on our floodplain from our GIS. And as he mentioned, we're very much in the floodplain, as we know if you were here for Harvey. If, and this is where we kind of stick our neck out a little bit, but just imagine, if you will, go up a little ways on 1128. We own some property you may be familiar with, where Manvel PD is right now. We actually own all of that right there. We've been talking about different ways to potentially have a PD park, a 1128 park, a master's park, whatever it's called. One thought is, you know, everyone knows where the police station is. It's not, you're not introducing something new into an area that's never had it before. It's not out in the middle of nowhere. So we asked PGAL just to test fit it. Would that even work? If not, then this dies before it ever even goes anywhere. But could it potentially work? So first pass through, oh boy, there it goes. So first pass through, that's the exact same footprint as has already been scoped out, regardless of where the building goes, whether it goes out, you know, near Del Bello or whether it goes right over here. It could potentially fit. This probably won't happen though, because this is 2 driveways on 1128. We already have 2 for the park right now. As much as TxDOT loves us and vice versa, they probably won't give us 2 driveways. So let's look at a different option. Here's just a continuation. So this is, again, the police station right here as it sits right now in our 2 driveways. Connect the 2, and then we'd have another driveway down here. The pond, again, this is so conceptual, but it's worth discussing. The pond in the back, probably not realistic, only because the only place to outfall is on 1128. The ditches are not, you know, 6, 8, 10 foot deep and along 1128. They're very shallow. So realistically, something like this could work, where you have your 2 driveways connected. You've got police department parking back here in the back. All this red would be a secured area. You've got a good, nice, big driveway on the other side, and then you've got a pond with, you know, aeration feature or whatnot if you wanted to, and you've got public parking in the front. What does that do to our park that we've been talking about? Well, this is about 6.5 acres or so. This, I don't know if you can see, yeah, that little square right there that we're using right now for PD, that could be, I mean, a 2-acre park. We could do a lot with that 2-acre park. It's not an 8-acre park, of course, but if that's where we wanted to still put one, the 2 could live together. The reason we came up with this, I guess two reasons. One, interim and police station, those 2 things don't belong in the same sentence, paragraph discussion, right? I mean, unless I'm missing something. Because of what they have to do to secure a building, it's just, it would make things very difficult. It's going to, the amount of time that it's going to take to build a building, unless there was just something that we could plug into today and maybe fortify some things, the amount of time that it would take to build a building, we might as well build the building instead of just a building, if that makes sense. So it's really more about the location. The beauty with this, if we wanted to go there, we're already working on the scoping to extend wastewater up there, because our Public Works Community Services building is just a little bit north of this. It's already got water right now. So, you know, we turn PGAL loose on the design and starting construction by the end of the year, probably. Just something we wanted to throw out. You said, how can we do it faster? That's one way. Use the land that we already own. So on a busy road already, you know.
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, it does everything that I wanted you to do and alleviates all of my concerns for what you're doing and gets them out of their building. I mean, I would argue, just for argument's sake, but since we don't have to argue it, I still won't say that, that would have been a temporary fix. So I think I could have gotten a pass from our own rules, because it was all never intended to be a long-term
No.
facility.
Rules are the rules, Jason. Rules are the rules.
But remember, we have reasonable excuses or whatever. But no, this is brilliant. This
Not for 15 minutes.
this does everything that I wanted. You're right. Everybody knows what a police station is. You have a beautiful water feature in the front, and so we don't have an eight acre park. Well, not a whole lot of people using that park over there anyway. So great.
Obviously, it's a change, sort of what the discussion that I guess the council had, we had, was a government complex where it all was kind of in the same place. If we build it over here, then obviously it's not over there. So that's slightly different, significantly different, but different. It frees up space over there. But, like Dan said, people know where the City of Manvel Police Department is now, so this might be a possibility. So it's not what we had talked about, but it's an option that could happen. You have to extend a sewer line. You have to get TxDOT approval for the driveway and the outfall. I guess that's about it. And then you design and, construct the building.
Go ahead, Lorraine.
How would this take us into the future? I mean, we build this, we're built out.
This is the same idea of what would have been built over there. It's still your 30, 40, 50-year building is what is anticipated in this structure. So again, if we build it, that's where it's going to be forever, not forever, for as long as we're all going to be here. Let's put it that way.
I mean, Your Honor, frankly, I've always had some, hesitation to having, police and court facilities in that building. I mean, it wasn't anything I was willing to veto, but I've always had a hesitation of having those types of facilities where the bigger vision is. So, I mean, this is even better because it keeps them out of the, I imagine weekends are going to be a nightmare out there. And do they really want to to be in and out of there on the weekends when there's hundreds of thousands of people around? This is a perfect fit. It keeps them on the outskirts. It splits us so that we don't have all of our critical facilities in one place. I mean, I just did the terrorist threat readiness this weekend, and I'm telling you, it opened my eyes to a lot of things. And this being one of them, that not all of our facilities should really be in the same place because people are crazy today.
This does not include court.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
But I'm saying
It's
if
just sort of police and
if
dispatch.
everything was in one place, it's a much sweeter target for somebody than if we're spread apart.
And it's interesting because through the evolution of this 160-acre plan, I mean, I have repeatedly said, and this is not a personal me, but you made the police station a personal use. So I'm going to jump right out and say that I've always thought it would be a lot more convenient rather than people having to come to court and wind in through to get to the city facilities, to leave courts here. We have the building, So, I mean, that was one of my thoughts. And then when Dan came up with this, I said, Walla Walla, I mean, there we are. But it's all been, regardless of your thoughts or my thoughts, individual thoughts, it's all been an evolution of thoughts, and I'm sure there's more to come, Mordecai. But I think that's true. Kyle?
As Dan said in kind of the first set of slides, if we're talking about putting multiple buildings on this piece of property, we're going to have to get more land for parking.
Mm-hmm.
Corner is critical. If we can identify other areas that we can use for parking, if we put multiple buildings on here, we're going to need more parking just simply because there are going to be more people coming here.
And that's one of the things, I promise I'm coming, Lorraine. And that's one of the things that I have in this evolutionary process. I mean, I think that we are at the point where we need to have that workshop or that extra meeting or whatever it is that we deem is necessary to cement some of these ideas and to talk about land purchase. I mean, we've got quite a few, not quite a few, but we've got several pieces of land identified currently that might be better options for different things, and some of those being just recently that popped up in the region, in this region. And so I think it's time for us to have those discussions and talk about giving some direction to see about acquiring those pieces of land. Lorraine?
We're giving up our only city park, and that's okay?
We're not giving it up.
1 acre. We're going to go down to a 1 acre city park in the size.
Two. Yeah, but we are also currently in conversations with the county that will make us that much more ambitious into trying to make some sort of agreement with them. We do need to do something. You know, I've gone out there and made the request, so I think we just have to continue the conversations and make sure that happens. I think the placement of this is just me personally, the placement of the police department sort of overshadows whether we make it a little bit more diminutive for the park right now. But I do want to ask the question, Chief, how do you feel about this?
Well, right now, if y'all authorize me to build a police department on the moon, I'm calling NASA tomorrow.
Okay, all right.
You know, I've been asked this question by a couple of council members already, you know, what my thoughts are on it and how I feel. It's obvious we have to do something. You know, it's time. Right now, we've been in a temporary building that, from my understanding, was a 5-year temporary fix. I understand where Councilman Albert's coming from to try to get us out of that temporary fix, but putting us into another temporary fix, to me, is just not feasible. To build a police department that we can function out of and to do what we need to do comes with certain requirements.
Right.
And to meet those requirements, it's going to cost a little bit more than this building. And then when we move out of that building, then we have to revamp that building to get it back to where it should be. So, you know, the thought process when we started talking about this a couple of weeks ago was, I like the idea of having a government complex. To me, it would put an imprint, it would put a footprint of what the city, branding, you know, everything we're trying to do with what the city looks like. But when you look at the other side of it too, the plans of building it beside where we're currently at has a lot of potential as well. You know, there's pros and cons to both of it, and I see both of them. But really, you know, if you ask my honest opinion right now of what I would want to do, I would probably recommend or say to build it, the design that Dan had up, that last design, right there beside the police department where it's at. That way, we already have infrastructure there. We have everything there. That's a cost that we don't have to incur right now. It takes away some of that cost for the land, for the roads, for the infrastructure. It's already there. All we got to do is build a sewer line. As far as what Lorraine was talking about as a park, you know, the land that's beside it, that would be a little bit of money. That would be a great facility. It'd turn into a nice little 2-acre park. What was there before was probably half an acre. And I know the plans in the parks was this big 8-acre complex. But right now, I think finding us a home, a permanent home, which this building is like Kyle said, when we scoped it out, we scoped it out to be a 50-year building. So it's going to be here for 50 years. And that's when you plan these departments, that's what you do because of the cost of them. So to answer your question, if I were to make a decision right now, what we have up there would be something that I think would fit and benefit the city as a whole.
Thank you. Okay. Dan? This stand.
I just
Sorry.
wanted to mention one other thing in the win column. It's already platted, believe it or not. We January 15th, 2010, and it ran the gauntlet back then of planning and zoning and city council. So that's a good thing. It's already platted.
Win-win. This stand.
Thank you, Mayor. So it's not like a 1910 plat that pulled from the county, okay. So, Mayor, I'd be totally supportive of doing a quick workshop here soon and seeing what PJL can mock up for us and put that there. I'd also be interested in seeing what would be recommended for the additional space that would become available on the 160 acres, and also seeing if there's anything we can do for development services, knowing that, possibly there's some stuff we could do over here or on the 2 acres, depending on what that looks like from a flood zone standpoint, floodplain standpoint. But I think workshopping some of those other items is a fantastic idea.
That's roughly about a 40,000 square foot building. So if you're taking, in effect, that area off of the 160 acres, there's parking that goes with it, but the building footprint is about 40,000 square feet, maybe a little bit more, 45,000.
Well, and maybe this is unrealistic, and it's off the top of my head, but which is a scary place to be. But one of the things that I was concerned about with this plan is that we, bless you, that we don't. I'm concerned about the police. I wouldn't nix this plan, but the police proximity to the rest of the city, and maybe there's some way to do some sort of satellite building, I mean, without having to do all the security things that you have to do with an original, but to at least have be in the position where we are hiring more officers, if we could have some sort of satellite situation where you've got a portion or a small percentage of whoever's on duty, and I don't know how unrealistic this is, forgive me, but to have a satellite building or situation of some sort that would take off that extra 7 to 10 minutes to get to the other side of town.
There would be some sort of substation that would probably have to be incorporated in.
Yeah, that's what I meant, substation.
And I think that makes complete sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Some sort of.
And
Yeah.
It still gives the chief some presence up there, but not
Exactly.
all of it.
Exactly. I just think that sometimes that 7 to 10 minutes is a lot of time,
One of the things, the council at the last meeting, I think it was, you approved a budget amendment that authorized the design. So the way that I'm understanding your general discussion right now is I need to go talk to PGL about doing this one.
Yeah, that was gonna actually be my next question, is based on what we did, what do you need to do differently? Do you have the authorization you need? Do we need to take some action?
The design itself is not a problem, and I'm not an architect and I'm not gonna play one, but I don't know if, I assume that there's some sort of materials testing or other things that they're gonna have to do to determine how to design the building itself. And if we're gonna move from over there to over here, part of, I think in that authorization, there is materials testing for that. So I would think it would be better if you actually took some action to direct us to say, not over there, but over here. That way we can sort of get with PGAL and say, no, go that way. Start now, go their way. So some sort of
Okay.
action directing us away from the city center to the area on 1128 would probably be best. That way we'd have something down and
Done.
and
Okay.
so.
All right.
I'd make a motion that, to direct the city manager to erect the new police station next, on the property the city already owns, next to the existing police station, not at the city center.
I'll second that. All those in favor? All those opposed? And the motion carries 7-0.
And I want to thank all of you. That was strong. That was good, thinking outside the box. That was looking at all the options. That was good work, all of you guys. Even you, Keith. Good job.
Did we get that? Is that on permanent record? Did we get that? Okay, all right. And that was Councilmember Albert. Jason Albert. Okay. All right, enough already, Deborah. All right, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve, Mayor.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor? All those opposed? All right, we got a 7-0 vote on that. Do I have any, well, we have an executive session. Yeah, we do. And so, we are going to not adjourn, we are going to go into executive session at 8:31, and we will convene to, pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551, wait, I already took my glasses off, .071, consultation with attorney to discuss the following. Discuss demand letter from Brazoria County Mud 61. All right, and we will return shortly. We are back from executive session. It is 8:50, and now I'm going to call for any council comments. Anyone? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Mayor.
Second?
I second.
All those in favor? And the motion carries 7-0. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.